I'd always get comments like, are you sick? Are you tired? And it's like, no, this is just what I look like. Like, why is that such an issue? Hey guys, so what's up? Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Hamali and I'm basically like your internet big sis. I give you advice, I tell you stories, and I talk about all the things that nobody wants to talk about. I recently put a question box on my Instagram stories asking you guys to share your brown girl problems, and the amount of you guys that replied uneven skin tone, hyperpigmentation, and dark circles was unreal. And trust me, as a fellow brown girl, I totally get it because I've had dark circles ever since I could remember. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about all things hyperpigmentation. I'm going to teach you how to cover your hyperpigmentation and also how to reduce it. And I promise you, I know what I'm talking about because I worked as a makeup artist for 6 years. And I've done makeup on hundreds, if not thousands of faces at this point. So I know a thing or two about makeup. Okay, enough yapping now. Let's get into it. The first thing we're gonna talk about is how to cover up your hyperpigmentation. So there's two ways you can go about it, using a color corrector and a concealer, or just straight up using a concealer. So I'm gonna start with the color corrector first because I feel like most people who have hyperpigmentation have been told to use a color corrector. The first thing you need to know about color correcting is color theory. If you're going in with a color corrector, what you're trying to achieve is a neutral base. And so the shade of color corrector you choose to use is very important because if you use the wrong color, then it's not going to neutralize your base and you're kind of back to square one. When we look at something like dark circles or hyperpigmentation, oftentimes the undertone of it is like a bluish purple. And the opposite of blue on the color wheel is orange. And that is why we use an orange color corrector. The biggest mistake I see people doing when using a color corrector is not choosing the right shade of color corrector for their skin tone. Oftentimes they hear orange color corrector and then they choose a shade like this, and that is way too orange sometimes for people's skin tones, or it might be way too light of an orange for some people's skin tones. It either ends up making you look like an Oompa Loompa or just way too ashy. So here's a very basic breakdown of what shade of color corrector you're going to use depending on your skin tone. So if you're in the light range, you're going to be using a light peach color corrector, something like this or like this. You can see it has like a hint of orange to it, but it's not too heavy. If you're in the light to medium skin tone range, which is the category that I'm in, you're going to be using a peach color corrector. This one here is my favorite. It's the Basanti Liquid VO2. You can see it's slightly more orange than the last ones that I showed you. Now, if you're in the medium to deep skin tone range, you're going to use an actual orange color corrector, something like this. And then if you're in the deep to rich range, you're going to use a reddish orange color corrector, something like this. So because I'm in the light to medium skin tone range, I'm going to apply a peach color corrector. I'm just gonna let this sit on my skin for a minute or two so that it dries down just a bit, which will help give me better coverage and prevent creasing. In the meantime, what I can do is apply my foundation. You're just gonna avoid the eye area, obviously. Now, if your dark circles are really bad and you want a fuller coverage around your eyes, what I would suggest is letting this sit for a bit, blending it out, and then applying your foundation, and also applying your foundation around your eyes as well to help give you that like extra layer of coverage. A lot of people don't like to do that though because it's more product around your eyes and it can feel really heavy and have the tendency to crease a little bit more. So that's kind of like a you call. But for the purposes of this video, I'm not going to do that, just so you guys can really see the difference that my methods make on hyperpigmentation. So I'm just going to use the color corrector and the concealer. Okay, so I've let this dry down a bit. Now I'm just going to go ahead and blend it out. Like you can already notice such a huge difference between my eyes. It's insane. And we haven't even used concealer yet. Also, I forgot to mention, I'm doing this on my dark circles because that's where I have the most hyperpigmentation. But if you have this around like your mouth or anywhere else on your skin, it's pretty much the same steps. The next thing we're gonna do is go in with concealer. Now, depending on how bad your dark circles are, I highly recommend using a medium to full coverage concealer just so you get the best coverage possible. My go-to concealers right now are the Huda Beauty Full Filter Concealer and the Vasanti Lit Up High Coverage Concealer. The shade of concealer you choose will also really change up how your dark circles will look. A lot of times on social media, they teach you to go a shade or two lighter. Personally, I don't always think that looks the best because it can end up making your eyes look gray and ashy. Again, it really depends on how bad your dark circles are. If they're not too too bad, then yeah, you can go a shade or two lighter to get that brightening effect. But if you have very heavy dark circles, I really wouldn't recommend that. I would say stick to your shade or go up a shade or two. This way you'll get a flawless finish and everything on your skin tone will look even. I'm in between shades right now, so I'm just gonna apply a little bit of this Huda Beauty concealer. It's a little too light for me right now. It's more my winter color. And then I'm gonna mix in the Vasanti Lit Up concealer just to get my right shade. And you can see the shade is just slightly darker than my skin tone, and this will really help just even everything out nicely. Now I'm just gonna let this sit for a minute or two because, like I said before, once it dries down a little bit, it gives you a better coverage and creases a little bit less. While I'm waiting, I just like to do my eyebrows so I'm not wasting any time. All right, now that the concealer has had some time to dry, you're just gonna go ahead and blend it out. Just look at that. Look at the difference. What a massive difference. And there's no gray or ashiness in sight. Now I know a lot of people still love that bright eye look. I do too, but in a more subtle way. And I like to achieve that using powder. So yellow powder will give you that brightening effect that you're looking for. But again, depending on your skin tone, the shade of powder you use will vary. So for a lighter skin tone, you might use a more pink powder to achieve a brightening effect. For a deeper skin tone, you might use a more heavier like peachy pink or a deeper yellow to get that brightening effect. And then for more medium skin tones, you're going to use like a softer yellow. Okay, now before you go on with your powder, you're going to make sure everything is blended out properly so that you have no creases. If you have creases and then you set your eyes with powder, it will set the crease and you'll start creasing throughout the day even more. And then you're gonna take a powder puff and lightly coat the powder. Take a little bit of the excess off from the back of your hand and then just set your eyes. And I like to push this into my skin. I don't like to bake. I feel like baking gives too heavy of a powdery effect and then it ends up making my eyes feel really heavy. Do you see that difference? It just brightened up this eye a little bit and just smoothed everything out. And it also really helps lift that sunken inline that you see here. Now it might look a little bit yellow right now, but once you put on the rest of your makeup, it blends in very nicely. If you still feel like it's too yellow for you, what you can do is take a foundation powder and a big flat brush and just apply that over your eyes to reduce the yellow, like so. I'm gonna finish off this side of my face so you guys can really see the difference between the two. So this is the final product. You can really see the difference in the before and after, how well my dark circles are covered up, how you can't really see this like indent anymore. And again, like I mentioned before, I don't really have too much uneven skin tone or hyperpigmentation around on my face, but the process is basically the same if you have hyperpigmentation anywhere else. Use the color corrector, use the concealer, and then set it with a powder. Now you obviously don't want to use like a yellow brightening powder or anything like that on hyperpigmentation around your face because it'll bring focus to those areas and it'll make it look really unnatural because that's not really how light hits your face. So for hyperpigmentation, don't use a yellow or pink setting powder. Use just a foundation powder that is the same color as your skin tone. So yeah, this is method 1. Now I'm going to show you guys method 2, which is just using concealer. Okay, so personally, this is the method that I like to use, and I'm just gonna do my foundation on this side. Now the steps are pretty much almost the same when it comes to this way versus the color corrector way. What I like to do though with this is add the foundation to my eyes so I get a fuller coverage, but I don't apply the foundation right here. I just take the leftover product that's on my sponge or on my brush and I just apply a thin layer around my eyes so that I'm getting a little bit more coverage. And you can already start to see the difference that that makes. But you can see doing it this way, my eyes look a little bit more gray than if I were to use a color corrector. That's because we haven't neutralized the base. In this case, what you're gonna do, depending on how dark your dark circles are, is use a concealer that is the exact same shade as your skin tone or something that is a shade or two darker. Personally, I think a shade or two that's darker works a little bit better, because if you go a little too light, or sometimes if you even go the same shade as your skin tone, it'll end up making your eyes look gray and ashy. So going up a shade or two helps neutralize the base better. And I like to use a concealer that has a little bit of an orange or peachy tone to it. If you're lighter, then I would have something that has a little bit more of like a pinky peachy tone to it. And then if you're a bit darker than me, then you're gonna go in with something that has a little bit more of like a reddish orange tone undertone to it. So I'm gonna apply this concealer here. You can see that it is slightly darker than my skin tone and has a bit of a more orangey tone to it. And also, I forgot to mention, you want to make sure that it is a full coverage concealer, because this is what will really help cover up the dark circles. With a color corrector, you can get away with a medium coverage because you already have that extra layer from the color corrector. And just like before, I'm going to let it sit for a little bit, dry down just slightly. In the meantime, I'm going to do my eyebrows. Okay, now that it's dried down a bit, you're gonna go ahead and blend it out. And you can see, even though it was darker than my skin tone, because I have the dark circles, it's perfect once I've blended it out. Now I'm gonna go in with a foundation powder that is my shade, and just set my eyes. And like I said before, remember to blend out all the creases so that you don't set that. All right, now you can see that everything's covered up really nicely, and you can pretty much leave it to that. But again, if you want that brightening effect, you go in with a yellow powder, and you're just gonna press that into your eyes. As you can see, all the dark circles are gone, and that indent doesn't look as deep anymore. This is honestly the way I do my makeup all the time. I skip the color corrector just because it's like one less step, and I think the results are pretty much the same for me. So why bother even buying a color corrector? But I also feel like my dark circles aren't as bad as some people's. So if you have like heavier hyperpigmentation, then I do think color corrector works better. You know what's so funny? When I was younger, I used to be so embarrassed of my dark circles, and now I couldn't give a fuck. I'd always get comments like, are you sick? Are you tired? And it's like, no bitch, this is just what I look like. Like, why is that such an issue? And it used to make me so self-conscious, but then as I got older, I realized that women are the only ones that people say this shit to. Like, men rarely ever get comments about their dark circles or hyperpigmentation. No one ever goes up to them and says, oh, are you sick or are you tired? My husband has dark circles, and literally I've never heard anyone say anything to him. I realize that we expect women to look prim and proper all the time. We can't look tired, we can't look exhausted, we can't look sick. It just makes people feel uncomfortable for whatever reason, especially if you're someone that enjoys dressing up or wearing makeup. It feels like there can't be any days off. There's obviously such a huge double standard because women aren't allowed to look like slobs or aren't allowed to look not put together sometimes. And when I realized that was the case, it's just kind of like, well, fuck you. Like, I'm just gonna look the way I look. If I want to dress up, if I want to cover my dark circles, then I will. If I don't, then I won't. And that just really helped me feel empowered in my looks because, you know, I'm not tying what I look like or how I feel like I should look like based on other people's opinions. It all just depends on my mood and if I feel like dressing up. And I think that really changed the game for me when I looked at my face and looked at my hyperpigmentation. Because hyperpigmentation is so normal, especially in South Asian cultures, and I shouldn't be made to feel bad about something that's genetic. Like, I had no say in looking like this, you know what I mean? And there are so many beautiful people that have hyperpigmentation. If you look at our ancestors, they're absolutely stunning, and they all have hyperpigmentation, and that doesn't make them any less beautiful. I just wanted to make sure to point out that I'm not teaching you these methods on how to cover up your hyperpigmentation or how to reduce it because I think it's ugly or dirty or because you look sick or tired or whatever else you've heard about your hyperpigmentation. I'm sharing this knowledge because on the days you feel like doing it, you know how to do it. And I also totally get that people have insecurities. I mean, I was so insecure about my dark circles for a very long time too, and there's still days where I am. And so those feelings are very valid, especially after all the comments you probably get on a regular basis. But I just want to remind you that hyperpigmentation is beautiful, it's normal, it's natural, and it's nothing to be ashamed about. You don't look tired, you don't look dirty, you don't look sick, you look stunning. Now that we've gone through how to cover your hyperpigmentation or dark circles, let's get into how to reduce it. Like I said before, hyperpigmentation is natural, normal, and can very much be genetic. And if it is genetic, there may not be a lot of things you can do to reduce it. For me specifically, because I don't have a lot of hyperpigmentation on my face, I can't speak too much of it. There is one product that I will recommend that I'll get into in a little bit, but for now I'm gonna speak more to my dark circles. So my dark circles are genetic. I'm never gonna fully get rid of them, and I've come to accept that, but there are things that I did that made them worse. So my first tip for reducing dark circles is drinking water. I drink about 2 liters of water a day. Depending on your size, you might drink a little bit less, a little bit more, but usually the ballpark is around 2 to 3 liters of water a day. And I noticed when I started doing this, my dark circles did start to reduce. Same thing with getting proper sleep, getting a good 8 to 9 hours of sleep. Especially as women, we do need more sleep since our hormonal cycles are very different, and there are periods in our hormonal cycle that require more rest. So I would recommend between 7 to 9 hours of sleep, and having like a regular sleep routine, meaning going bed to a certain time and waking up at a certain time, is super helpful. Again, I'm guilty of not always keeping up with this, but when I do this, I notice my dark circles are much better than usual. Now, in terms of eye creams that have helped my dark circles, these two are my favorite. This one is the one I've been using currently. It's the Sahajan Golden Glow Eye Balm. This is Ayurvedic, so it's made with natural ingredients, and the ghee in this product is really supposed to help reduce the dark circles. And I've noticed such a huge difference when I started using this. The Ole Henriksen Banana Bright Eye Cream I also really love. This is probably the first eye cream that I use that actually worked for me. They're both great. Personally, I like the Sahaja one a little bit better, but they do have very different textures. This one is more of a cream and this one is more of a balm. So this one is going to feel a lot more greasy. It actually really does feel like ghee once it starts like melting into your skin, but I feel like you can't really go wrong with either of these. And then finally, for hyperpigmentation, like I mentioned, I don't have a lot of hyperpigmentation around my face, but I have dealt with uneven skin tone, and I really love the La Roche-Posay Mela B3 serum. I've gone through so many bottles of these. I think I've probably gone through like, I think this is my 4th now. And I really love the way it just evens out my skin tone. Personally, I'm a pimple picker, and so I always end up getting dark spots on my face because I pick at my face. And this really helped reduce all those dark spots, and sometimes even like got rid of some of them. So I would highly recommend adding this into your routine. Now, I hope these tips and tricks helped you out. I know as a fellow brown girl that has dealt with dark circles all her life, how daunting it can be to deal with them, and how it can really take a hit to your self-esteem, especially with all the comments that are made towards you. But again, I just want to remind you that, you know, hyperpigmentation, dark circles, they're all beautiful. It's totally normal and natural, and you know, F anyone that says otherwise. That's all I have for you guys in today's video. I will link all the products I used in my LTK, which will be linked in the description below, and I'll make a few different product recommendations in different price ranges if I can, just in case if anyone is looking for more affordable products as well. Now, if there's any other topics you want me to cover, advice you want to ask for, questions you want answered, let me know in the comments below, or send me a DM on Instagram. I've also linked that in the description below. If you did like this video, if you found it helpful, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel, and maybe share it with a friend that needs to see it. And as always, thank you guys so much for all the love and support you show me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!